All right, everybody, I have a really great product to talk about today, and it's affordable, it's beautiful, and it sounds out of this world good. Truly, I couldn't believe it. So one day I went to Amazon and I was looking at their tube amp selections. Now, many years ago, was it 4.5 years ago, I reviewed the Wilsonton, I think it was the R8 tube amp. And back then it was $12.99, and I thought it was really good for the money, a big bang for the buck. So I went back to Amazon to see if I could repeat that success and buy an amp from Amazon that would arrive, be perfect out of the box, sound beautiful, and not cost a ton of money. That was my hope, at least. So after looking at all of the tube amps, two struck my eye actually from the same company. Now this company has an interesting name. It's called Oil Lily, O-I-L-I-L-Y, Oil Lily. Very interesting name for an audio company, but yes, this is an amp that comes from China. But let me tell you this, I've been running this amp for weeks and have not had one issue, one hiccup, one tube problem, any humming problem, no buzzing problems, no fit and finish problems, no volume problems, no problems with channel imbalance or mismatch. This company seems to be taking great care to make these amps. And this one that I'm talking about today is their 300B amp. Now, I reviewed some 300B amps in the past. I reviewed a Wilsonton, I think it was the R300 when that first came out. I really liked it, but it was because it was so affordable, right? I think it was another one in that $1,200 range at the time, and it offered up that big, beautiful 300B kind of vibe, but it was a little different than some 300B amps. I then went and reviewed the little Inspire amp from Dennis Had, the guy that used to create and own Carry Audio. He used to create all the amps for Carry. And that was a 300B amp, and then I added a preamp. And that had a little bit of a different sound from the Wilsonton. The Carry, or the Dennis Had Inspire, was more airy, right? It was more three-dimensional. It was such a beautiful little amp. So I went to Amazon and I bought this Oil Lily because I've been craving that 300B sound again, and I currently don't have a 300B amp here. So I was expecting the worst. Because I have ordered other amps from Amazon from China. I ordered 2 other amps over the past 6 months, and they both had an issue from the same brand. So this time I tried Oil Lily, right? And I bought their 300B amp because I love the looks of it. It wasn't too huge. It had the automotive paint finish, auto bias. It used 5 tubes total, uses 5 tubes total. Pure tube amp, right? It's almost as if it has VU meters, a power, and a volume. It's only a 1 input amp, but let me tell you this, there's ways to use it with 2 different sources. I opened the box up and I'll show you some kind of not so great phone footage I took when I was opening it up. It arrived and I was actually very impressed with how well this was packaged. Now it's shipped with the tubes installed, which you normally don't see, but they had a custom foam piece over so those tubes couldn't move during shipping. Everything was perfect. There's a metal tube cage you can leave in place or remove. The 2 big transformers are on each side instead of the back of the tubes, offering up a bit of a different design. I also saw this design in the Oil Lily 211 tube amp, which I might buy to check out after my experience with the 300B. So this 300B tube amp came in. It's only 8 watts per channel, but let me tell you, I tried it with various speakers and I was shocked at what this amp was doing. But let's go back a little bit and talk about the 300B tube and why someone would want a 300B amplifier. Now, to some, the 300B, not all, but to some, the 300B is kind of the holy grail of tubes in audio. Now, what the 300B presentation is, it's airy usually, it's light. The vocals are mesmerizing, haunting, very holographic and three-dimensional. And I'll say this, the Oil Lily 300B amp that I paid $1,099 for from Amazon, it arrived in 3 days. This is the most holographic, three-dimensional amp I've ever had in here. Even more three-dimensional than big mega amps, exotic amps, Class D, Class A, Class AB. I've had them all in here. This does something with the sound stage that is so beautiful, and I want to get more into that. But that's a trait of the 300B tube. Now, what are the weaknesses of the 300B tube? Usually, the 300B tube doesn't have really great bass output. The Dennis Hat amp I had decent bass, but not any kind of bass that would blow you away. The R300 Wilsonton had a beefy mid bass, like they injected more color into the mids, but the deep bass wasn't super impressive, but it gave the impression of a big beefy sound. What about the Oil Lily 300B amp? Now, I hooked it up initially, I put it in the system with the Node icon, and I'm going to a Fez Equinox DAC. Now, this DAC is made in collaboration with Lampizator, and it's a really beautiful DAC. It uses a tube, so it's a tube DAC. So I had all this connected up, and I first started with my Icon 12 speakers because they're 92 dB efficient. I believe they're 92 dB efficient. That means they're kind of easier to drive than something that's, say, 84 dB efficient or 86 dB efficient. I've also tried these with the Pure Audio Project Duet 15 horns. So when I first put it in with the Icon 12s, I was like, what? What? The 300B magic is here in this amp. It is airy, it's three-dimensional, it's holographic, but you know what? It has really crazy impressive bass. Listening to low bass heavy tracks, it was like doing almost as well as some other amps that cost a heck of a lot more, and it was just so luscious, right? Now, this amp does inject some color to your sound. So if you're someone looking for a neutral, perfect, lit up sound, that's not what this amp is about. This amp is for those who want something simple, something beautiful. They want airy vocals, but they want some color injected into that music, meaning there's a multitude of colors with this amp. When you play a song and you sit in that spot, you have a warmer, luscious, full-bodied sound, but there's more sparkle up top than I thought there would be, because a lot of 300B amps are rolled off at the top, and this one is a little bit, but somehow these sounds come out and they're extended and they're just floating and hanging in the air. And I was in disbelief because I had the volume on super low and it was providing a rich, big sound. So I said, okay, maybe there's not much action on the volume knob. Maybe if I turn it up to noon, it's just going to distort and crack. So I turned it up to 11 a.m. and I was almost blown out of the room. And the sound got a little more beefy, right? But it retained that magic. I had zero complaints. So I brought in the Pure Audio Project Duet 15 horns. Those are even easier to drive. And once again, the sound of this 300B integrated amplifier came through, right? The airy, the holographics are top notch here. The vocals were giving me goosebumps, and that's what this amp's specialty is. If you want to sit in your space and say, throw on your favorite artist and have it sound like they're right there with you, this is one of the best I've heard in that regard, and it's the least expensive, I should say, not the most, it's the least expensive integrated amp I've heard that does this. Now, this is not a lightning fast amp, but no 300B amp is. This is not about special effects and sharp sounds and big dynamics that are sharp, right? This is more of a little bit rounded, like a little bit more beauty. There's a lot of beauty coming through here. Now, I will say this Oil Lily, I like the sound better than the Wilsonton R300. I like the sound better even over that Inspire 300B amp I had, and those were using Western Electric tubes. These are using generic Oil Lily branded tubes, but you know what? They sound beautiful. I'm sitting here listening and I'm like, why would I want to change these tubes? Because they're offering a beautiful, beautiful sound right out of the box. You can change them and swap out different tubes, get a little bit of a different flavor, but out of the box stock, this amp sounds absolutely gorgeous. But this also ships with a full booklet manual. And it's pretty impressive because there's everything you want to know about it is in this. And a lot of times these little, these little amps from China that you get from Amazon or wherever, they come with bad manuals or very limited information. This has a full manual, the full specs, full details of how to use it. Now, this is a one source amplifier, so there's only one input, right? And there's some quality speaker connectors on the back. And I use it with the Note Icon streamer or any streamer or DAC that I have going in. But if you're using an external DAC, for example, I was also testing a CD transport. So I had the Note Icon going into the Fez Equinox. I also had the CD transport going into the Fez Equinox. Then that would then go to the integrated amp. And then if I wanted to switch the inputs, I would switch it on the DAC. But for those of you who just want one source, whether it's analog with vinyl, a turntable, this would be a beautiful solution if you have speakers that are easier to drive. Say you just want to stream music and you have speakers that are easier to drive. The one input is plenty. So if one input works for you and you have speakers that are not crazy hard to drive, this is a crazy beautiful amp. This is a steal of a deal, and I bet you anything, I bet you within 3 months' time, the price of this amp is going to be more. I'm gonna guess they're gonna go up to like $1,500. There's 2 screws on the top, and these are hum pots. There's one for the left and one for the right. And a long time ago, I owned the Line Magnetic. I owned a couple of Line Magnetic tube amps, and they had hum pots. And my big amp would sometimes hum out of one side. You'd hear like a hmm. So you just go to these hum pots and you turn the screw until the hum is at its least amount of noise. Now, the good news is with the Oil Lily, when you first power it on, you hear a little hum. Just very slight. It's like very slight hum. But then after about 30 seconds, at least this one, the hum vanishes. There is absolutely no transformer noise, no humming, no noise from the speakers. And that's almost unheard of in a tube amp of this price. It's got a refinement about it that I don't normally hear in under $5,000 amplifiers. So those are all the pros. I talked about the pros. Makes beautiful music, haunting vocals that were giving me goosebumps on my arms and my neck, right? Big bass when called upon. The bass is here. This is a 300B amp that has tremendous bass performance. One of the finest low volume listening amps I've ever had in here. I've had some really fine amps in here that cost a lot of money. Some amps in here that cost less money that were even better than those. But this amp for low volume listening is top notch. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. And that's another really good trait for a 300B amp. Low volume listening can be all out magical. And this one has that magic. It has tons of it. If I buy a $10,000 amp, sometimes I have buyer's remorse and I'm like, man, I could have used that money for something more important, and then I'll return it or sell it or whatever. But this is something you can buy, or at least that's how I feel, guilt-free, because once you get it, $1,099, it's still a lot of money, and to a lot of you, that's a lot of money. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money, but compared to the competition of what's out there, this is very affordable. And when you get it, you're not going to want to send it back unless it has a problem. And that's what's cool again about Amazon Prime. You're not stuck with it. So that's how I bought mine, Amazon Prime. So what are the cons of the Oil Lily 300B amp? There's no remote control, so it does not come with a remote. If you want to change the volume, you got to get up from your chair the old-fashioned way and turn the dial. In many ways, this feels to me like you're buying a brand new amp that was made in 1978, right? But it's new old stock and it's perfect and everything is great and the caps are new, and it's like buying a new vintage amp with that vintage sound, because this has that full tube sound, not a partial tube sound, not a hint of tube sound. This is a full all-out tube amplifier, and that's what it's going to give you in sound. So if you've been wanting to hear what a legit tube amp sounds like, this is one of them. And I think Oil Lily, I think they're a new company. I haven't seen them before. They might be trying to make a statement and putting out such quality audio gear here at such a great price. Maybe they're trying to get noticed. So I am happy to make this video to let you guys know this is a killer integrated amp. The other con, I get sidetracked. One source, one input, so that has to work for you. If you have multiple sources, this is not an amp for you. Those are really the only cons. There's no noise, there's no buzzing. The heat, it gets warm, but it doesn't get red hot, so that's really cool. There is a headphone jack. I didn't test it, but there is a headphone out. And the manual says when you plug in your headphones, it cuts off the speaker taps and goes right to the headphones, so it's fully automatic. There's no other cons that I can think of. It does have a tube cage that's really actually sharp looking. It comes on and off really easy. It's metal, it's quality. The connectors are quality. Everything about this amp is solid. So if you've been looking for an amp that has the full qualities of a tube amp, and you like the 300B sound, or maybe you've never heard a 300B and you like the idea of those haunting vocals, holographic sound stage, a big wide sound stage. One other thing, there's a lot of depth here, and you don't hear depth in a sound stage in every single amplifier. It's actually more of a rarity. So this one has the width and depth, not so much the height, but the width and the depth. So fantastic tube amp. I would even recommend this as a second amp. Somebody who has a system and you have speakers that this will drive. If you have 85 dB efficient speakers that are 4 ohm, I don't know how this would do with those speakers. There are 4 ohm taps on the back and there are 8 ohm taps on the back. I did run it with the Bucard E50s, which are not the easiest speaker to drive, and it plumped them out, fleshed them out. But if I have a feeling if I went really loud, then it would run out of steam. But at low to mid levels in my 13 by 18 space, beautiful. One other thing, this is not a one-trick pony. Another 300B amp I had reviewed, the Inspire by Dennis Head that I mentioned, it wasn't great with rock music or heavy music because the bass was a little lighter. This, I'm playing all kinds of music, rock, metal, EDM, I tried hip hop, right? Bluegrass, jazz vocals, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Live at the Sands, right? With Sammy Davis Jr., Diana Krall, classical. Now I would use a high power solid state for classical for all those dynamic swings, but this was sounding lovely. So it's not a one trick pony. And with that, I'll stop blabbing about it. But I love this amplifier. I bought it with my own money. It wasn't sent to me for review, and I'm not returning it. It's really, I'm already, I think, past my return date anyway. It's a beautiful amp, and it sounds awesome. Going back to the music, so listening to some music, right? Listening to Diana Krall live in Paris sounded really nice. The drums were big and there was heft to them because this is so good at bass. Her vocals again were dead center in the imaging, and the instruments were all around her, just like if you were watching on a stage and your ears were picking up where each artist was, whatever they were playing. So very nice. And it had there's nothing aggressive sounding about this amp. It's smooth, it's full bodied, it's got some warmth, but it has all of those traits of the 300B tube. I was listening to Rammstein, right? Deutschland. I use that track to test the dynamics, the power, the energy of a system or a speaker. And it sounded, again, really good. Now, not as powerful and dynamic as, say, the Devilet Astra or the Modrite stack, but it's different. I don't like to say better or worse, it's just different. So listening to that song, all of the details were separated in space. And the vocals were dead center as always, but you heard every little hidden detail being exposed, yet those details had a life about them, like an aura and energy about them. Very nice. There were some songs on this amp that I've heard details that were very obscured, even on some high dollar amps. But here they were brought more forward. So you're hearing a lot more of what's in the recording It's being brought out to you more and in such a beautiful way. I'm just excited that this is an amp I found that's $1,099. It looks beautiful, sounds beautiful, and has been rock solid the whole time I had it. Highly recommend this amp. At least the one I have here has zero issues. I can't guarantee that they all will. I have no idea. But the one I have here, everything on it is solid. So with that, I will end this. If you like the video, thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you soon in the next one.